Hello students. So today we're going to talk about the 23rd Psalm, which is a very peaceful, kind of comforting passage in the Old Testament of the Hebrew Bible. So it's told from the perspective of David. David and Goliath. David was the story where the young shepherd boy whooped up on this Philistine giant who had been challenging everybody and been a major nuisance. But anyway, David, with God by his side, of course, uses what little bit he has, a rock and a slingshot, to defeat a mighty adversary. So later in life, David becomes a king. He certainly doesn't do everything perfectly, and he's an interesting guy to look at, but he expresses his feelings in the Psalms. There's 150 of them, some of which are attributed to him and some to some other characters. Whether those feelings are rage or anger, dismay, fear, any of those things, or closeness and joy in his relationship with his Creator. They have a very open sort of just a relationship, not a distant thing. So I like these books of the Bible, or these passages in the Bible. Some of the poetic conventions are lost on me because they're tricks from the Hebrew language that of course I can't read. So I guess my first exposure to the 23rd Psalm was through the King James translation, and I learned that 1611 text from a pencil that I borrowed in 3rd or 4th grade from my friend. So it had the entire 23rd Psalm on it. I don't know how they squeezed it in there, but so that entertained me while I was learning other things that 3rd graders should learn. So it goes kind of like this. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup floweth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So, so in this poem, which the 1611 translation under the authority of King James was a 7-year effort by a committee. So it's supposed to be fairly conservative and artfully done, but it's interesting also to study this passage through time and to look at some later translations or more conservative or liberal translations, just to kind of see how language evolves through time and space. I like to compare it with the NIV or the Message. There's a couple of Spanish translations I like to look at too, just to help me learn that language and to understand what people are saying. But one of the words, first of course, David compares God to a shepherd, and that would be a job that David had as a teenager or as a young man. So as a shepherd, he would have taken care of his flock and provided for his flock and make sure they had what they need and protected them from enemies. So the verbs in that early part where he says, the Lord is my shepherd, he sets up that comparison or metaphor. I like that those verbs, even though the images are so peaceful and still, the verbs also have authority. Makes, maketh, leadeth, restoreth. They're good words, but sometimes in the busyness, at least in my life, it's hard to slow down or to get off the hamster wheel of routine. So during this time of coronavirus, and I'm a quarantine teacher, I have this solitude or quietude that I'm not used to having, but the passage is comforting to me now. In the second part of the poem, the speaker swaps from talking about God in the third person to talking to God. So he says, in front of my enemies you set a table. So he's prepared. Anyway, he says God is taking care of him, providing for him right in the face of while his enemies are watching. So sometimes we do have enemies or things that we feel threatened by, but David is comforted that he will be provided for, and he sees it happening in his life. And as a king or as a big shot, of course he does have a lot of enemies, and there's a lot of family drama if you're interested in that. Go back and read it in the Old Testament. And then towards the end, There's fish jumping behind me and stuff, but hopefully it's a fish and not a gator, right? There's a little duck. It's a pet duck, by the way. So anyway, so I lost my train of thought, but it's a wonderful passage. The Psalms are, a lot of them they're basically songs meant to be sung with the harp or the lyre, and some other authors are the sons of Asaph. There's also some Greek or Aramaic maybe in the Old Testament, but again, I can only speak for the English. So hope you enjoy. Go look it up.